didn't even do that. um, all right, welcome to season two, episode 12. I got Steve here with us. So go ahead and introduce yourself, brother, where you're from, what you do, and then
Sure,
we can get into the topic.
absolutely. So my name is Steve Alexander. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in private practice. I practice out of New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I work remotely, and I typically tend to focus on Black men who experience trauma, but I really see everyone. So the youngest is 9, the oldest is about 62, and I really just try to help people live more happier lives, just help them be more present. And when I'm not a therapist, I'm a father, a new father. I enjoy other like meaningful activities. So you're gonna get a lot today.
So I wanted to ask you, like, what made you wanted to get into helping other people? What was your goal, or what was it because you maybe have maybe experienced trauma yourself,
All,
or what is it? What kind of led you to that field?
all of that. And I think that's such a great question, bro. So, and I don't. If I'm being too long-winded, let me know. But I'll just tell you really quickly. So, I would say two things. I've experienced trauma in my past. The biggest one I could say was being robbed at about 14 or 15 years old. And I know what it's like to, walk every day and have to look over your shoulders and feel like it's happening again. And now you have to present yourself a certain way. I'm naturally a very fun-loving person, but that at 14 and 15 made me real aggressive. Not because I'm an aggressive person, but just like I never want this to happen again, right? So to answer your question, there was that, of course. I always wanted to be a therapist, but my family, they said, you're not going to make any money doing that. Like, you don't make much money at all. They were probably thinking about, I don't know what they were thinking, but that's what they told me. The next big reason was I went to college. I started, I worked in business and risk management at the time, right? And I became, I wouldn't say clinically depressed, but very sad. And every day I just felt like I was fighting myself, fighting myself. So I applied to one program to make this short. And the reason I did it was I said, if what's going to happen is I'm going to apply to this program. I have a business background. They're not going to accept me. And then I can cut that off. I don't have to think about that again. I'm going to go full force with business. They accepted me. That was Columbia. And then I started doing like the training and everything. I loved it. And now I'm here.
Wow, that's wonderful to hear. Because we need more therapists in this, trying times of what we're going through. So now I want to kind of flip the conversation over to survival mode. So I think it's a lot of different combinations of why people, um, right now, just this the economy that's we're not really doing good. Like we're in a recession. A lot of people from the government is not going to tell you all of that because they don't want you to fear. But I think that, with all that's going on, tensions rising, men and women are divisive.
Yep.
Um, People feel like they live in paycheck to paycheck. Like we are in survival mode for most people, and it goes beyond just men. But to today's topic is just like understanding why men feel like they're in survival mode, and how it's affecting their mental health. Like it's, I was in survival mode like 4 or 5 months ago, just trying to find a job
Okay.
and not being able to find what I was really looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So those bills don't stop coming, right? They don't stop coming, and then you feel like you have to rush to get anything just to suffice your life. So me as a black man, like we're always struggling, to try to find what we like and what we don't like. But then there comes a time where everything is just so messy in life, like your dating life, your family and friends, and all of that. So I think it's just a lot of combinations of people just men are just feeling like they're just trying to survive, and unfortunately sometimes people are going to do bad things like robbing and killing. We're going to see more of that. That's just the reality of it right now. That's the reality we're living in. So me personally, I would never do that. Not perfect, but I believe in getting out here and grinding and working hard.
Yeah.
And I was able to find, I had 4 different job offers, but it was the grind of just keep putting in application after day after day after day.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend that, like, you go on all different job boards if you're struggling and try to find something, to survive. What's your thoughts on about it, Steve?
Yeah, no, I agree. And so one thing I'm hearing from you, bro, is that you seem very resilient because it's very when you're going through chronic stress, and I'm not saying you had it, but sometimes when bills are piling up and it just keeps coming and coming. You experience chronic stress. It can be hard to say. It can be easy to just say, hey, let me just throw in a towel, or let me just hide and maybe it'll go away. And of course it doesn't go away, but you just kept going and going. I love stories like that. And I agree with you. It's so sad. And there's a lot of men suffering silently. And the way I know that is like we see people on Instagram and they're on social media and they have the bravado and everything. But I see behind that because people come to me, right? And it's just so sad because so many people are experiencing chronic stress. And then when we speak about survival mode, what I would call this hypervigilance. So a constant state of always being on. And when you have that, there's so many negative implications, or it's just not good for our mental health, right? So I'll say very quickly and then be quiet. Everyone has some form of a medical ailment, whether they think about it or not. There's very few people that has a clean bill of health, right? When you add the mental health component, there's something called allostatic load, which just means it compounds everything. It makes everything worse. You get what I'm saying? So these are things we need to think about. So even the fact that we're in survival mode and things aren't looking good, we got to find ways to be present, find ways to take a step out of that when we can.
And I think men are killing themselves as well too, just because I'm in a lot of men's mental health groups, so I see a lot, and I've been doing this for my other show. I've been doing that for 3 years, and I've seen a lot of sad stories that they just tire of trying to make a dollar stretch. You know what I mean? Like it's so many, it's so many miserable people in the world as it is. Yeah. But I think that one way to kind of overcome some of the anxiety is to kind of sit with yourself and believe that you can do it, because there's a solution to every single problem, no matter what you're going through. You have to sit with yourself and ask yourself, who can I talk to? There's resources, community resources, like seeing a therapist, they can kind of connect you with community resources too. If you're feeling like nothing that you're doing is working. So I think that there's always going to be a solution, but 9 times out of 10 people, they need immediate results right now.
Right.
Like I was saying earlier, like the bills don't stop coming, and then that's stressful. And you're like, they keep calling me, wanting to know what's going on, like why I haven't paid it, and you can't pay it because you don't have a job, and you don't have a job because the job market is bad. And it's just all these different things that just keep compiling. So what are some of your techniques that maybe you might implement to kind of help your clients if you had a client like that? What are some of your
techniques? I'm realistic, man. I know a lot of people would say talk therapy, and I'm a talk therapist, so I probably shouldn't say that. I don't always recommend talk therapy for everyone. Just because if someone is going through chronic financial issues, right? Meaning like persistent, pervasive, this is going on, just talking about it, it can help. It can make you feel very lighter. And like I'm probably taking away from my business by saying it, but I'm very real. Talking about it may not always help. So what I suggest to people that come in, right? So I would say if it's something from the past that's causing this hypervigilance, let's say beliefs about money that happened. Like me, I have some of that. My father used to say, listen, if you don't have any money, the dogs in the street are better than you. And that always stuck with me, right? But it's not something that should be affecting me today, but sometimes it does. If that's the case, then there are modalities I might use therapeutically, like EMDR or CBT. Or EMDR means eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, right? A form of therapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy to try and break that. But if it's something where this is like very, very real, talk therapy may not help. It might be nice, but I'm going to say, listen, while you're talking to me, let's also get you with an accredited financial counselor. Let's talk about how you can build a skill where even though you're looking for the job, and I want you to look at the job, let's do 2 postings a day. Let's also get you to the point where you're building a skill so you can start something for yourself. You don't have to be a millionaire. When I hear about millionaires, my mind kind of tunes out a little bit because it's just so not real. But how could you bring in like $50 a month, right? You might have some kind of skill. A lot of Black men have so many skills and talents, and it's crazy once we start talking, but they're so wound up with everyday stresses that they can't even think about it. So I'm not going to say, how do you feel about it? Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but let's see, is there another skill? Is there some talent you have that we could just, because once you start it, you could always build it and compound it. But let's try to figure out what you have that's untapped. So that's how I might look at it. So if it's something where, listen, this is a real situation, I'm going to get very, very, I guess you call it pragmatic. But if it's something that like a belief from before, then yeah, we'll use the therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, or like an EMDR or something like that. Does that answer the question?
because there's no one solution to one
No.
problem. Like there's always going to be something that you continuously keep going throughout your life. Like just because you face that one problem, that doesn't mean you're not going to face another problem.
Right.
I always tell me, like, we're never done healing. Like we're
That's right.
never done. There's always going to be a problem every single day of our lives as long as we live, and we have to figure out a solution to it. There's always going to be something that I think that triggers us or that makes
Right.
us angry or something like that. But learning how to process the
That's
emotions,
right.
saying, okay, I know that I'm going through this right now, but it's not, it's just temporarily. Like I'm going to be back up on my feet.
Right.
And you have to give yourself a lot of, motivational talks in your own mind
Yeah.
to talk you out of those dark moments and things of that nature. But I feel like there's always going to be something that continuously bothers us. So, you was mentioning like different modality
Yeah.
techniques.
Yeah.
So, what is all the different techniques? If you like, maybe four
Yes.
different techniques that you maybe use.
Sure. And one thing I didn't add on there, because there's so many, right? You could be here for hours and hours. But one of the things before we even get into the modalities is I encourage people to have a list. And this, you don't have to do this with a therapist, but have a list of successes you've had in the past. Because I'll be honest, I went through some stresses pretty recently. One that actually sent me to a doctor. And I'm usually pretty healthy, right? But it was some financial stresses because I work privately, which means that some days it's going to be good and some other times it's not so great. But one of the things that helped me is just having a list of accomplishments, things that I've gotten through in the past. So even when it seems really dark, I say, all right, well, I've kind of been through something similar. Even if it's different, I know I've gotten through something before. So just having a list of achievements that shows like, listen, I know I'm pretty good and I can get through things, and it can be anything on that list, right? That's number one. If we start talking about things like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, it's really about things like targeting your beliefs, right? So, for instance, if I give you something very specific, if someone says, come to me, say, Steve, I'm really going through all these financial stresses and this is never going to get better. And this is making me feel so down. I can't sleep. I would try to say, okay, well, let's see how likely of a case that is. Have you always been down? Usually people aren't down forever, right? So then you start targeting beliefs. It's called reframing, cognitive restructuring. I won't get into the boring details of it, but trying to target the beliefs, right? Help people to, sometimes there's something called a cognitive interweave where you just get somebody that's feeling stuck. You may ask them a certain question, like, for instance, if you came and say, yo, bro, listen, man, I'm struggling, whether I be a therapist or not, I would say, okay, right. Well, imagine me and you have a relationship, right? And imagine if I came and told you that I was stuck and there's nothing I could do and I'm feeling hopeless. What would you tell me? And then people would probably, oh, yeah, well, I'll tell them, well, here's what you can do. But, all right, well, why don't you apply that to yourself? So any little thing that can get them past, right? So that's called a cognitive interweave. That's cognitive behavioral therapy. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR, is really a trauma therapy. So it was designed for people who had extreme traumatic events, let's say car accidents, they saw someone die, but it could be things around money too, right? Who's to say what a trauma is? And that's not like talk therapy. It's very simply, you focus on something called bilateral stimulation. Somebody will recall the very distressing image, and then we do something called eye movement. It's not hypnosis, it's just called eye movements. And what it does is it just takes something that brings up a lot of stress for you and makes it less distressing. Because the mind can't process, or it's hard for it to process two things at once. You get it? So while I'm holding you here, thinking about the negative image or the trauma, and we're doing bilateral stimulation, it tends to reduce some of the distress associated with it. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's something that I think a lot of men really need to kind of work on themselves a little bit too,
I
so
agree.
they can,
I agree.
they they don't realize, they don't know the power of therapy. Like
Right.
they don't know that obviously you have to put in the work for
Yeah.
you to heal yourself, but there is techniques to kind of help you to cope with life. And that's why I'm always going to be a big advocate, for therapy. I'm never going to disc it, but I get it. Like you're saying, it may not be for everybody.
No.
It's always going to be there and available. And
Yep.
if you have insurance, you don't have to worry about paying for it. It's
Yep.
covered. Some therapy is called Medicaid or
Yep.
Medicare.
100%.
So it's never a financial issue if you're thinking about, okay, I don't have money. But then there are therapies that do cost money and you have to pay out of your pocket.
Right.
Just don't go to those.
What I would say too is like, I think everyone should try therapy. I myself am in therapy. And even as a healer, therapist, whatever you want to call me,
It's
clinician,
always interesting to see
yeah,
therapists in therapy, right?
yeah, I actively
Because
go,
they're human too, right?
yeah, right. So it's like I really would hope that every black man watching this would set up at least, let's say, 3 sessions. You know what? Just one session. Try it. Now, the things that are going to make it more successful is obviously having someone that you can relate with or someone that you like. And trust is number one. It's not like going to see a physician. And I'm sorry if I'm going off on a tangent real quick,
It's
but
okay.
yeah. So it's not like going to a physician. You got a headache and they say, "Well, I'm going to prescribe an Advil." And whether you hate that doctor, whether you think they got bad breath or they're the worst person in the world, you take the Advil, it's going to help with the headache, right? Therapy is not like that. If you don't like and trust the person you're working with, it tends to be, this is where you hear people say, well, I tried therapy. It sucks. It doesn't work for me. I'm not going back. So at least try to find somebody you like and trust, give it 1 to 3 sessions, and then you reassess after that.
Yeah. Um, what was that? So I think now I want to kind of like get a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more personal here. Like, so take us back to like when you maybe were struggling in your life,
Yep.
and how did you overcome some of the things? Because at the time, back in the day, they didn't talk about mental health as much as they're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
So how did you cope with life? Like, what was some of your triggers or your breaking
Yep.
points in life? That's
Yeah.
like, man, I can't do this anymore. Like,
Man, I have so much, man. Where do you want to start? So I have a baby that's 6 months old, right? First time father. Oh my God, like the lack of sleep. Because I tell people there's 5 things before you even talk to a therapist. The 5 things you want to do to cope, so to speak. You can say nutrition, sleep, exercise, routine, and some form of an outlet. That could be a journal. Don't have to be a therapist, right? So all of that is disrupted once I had the kids. So we could talk about that. But particularly, I will say this because I didn't cope very well with getting robbed at 14, 15, right? And I can tell you, I'll go like this. So at the time when I was robbed at 14 or 15, I remember crying hysterically, and I thought the world was just now terrible. And I'm like, I got to carry a gun now, or I got to carry a knife, or this and that. And how am I going to protect myself? So I developed, you asked how I cope, I developed looks or ways of looking at people that was extremely intimidating. So that way, out the gate, before you even try me, you think, okay, well, this person seems like either he's off or he's very aggressive. So that was my way of coping with it at the time, just being honest with you. Would not go to see a therapist because I was very young. I didn't even know they existed. I couldn't stand talking to people, and I wouldn't go to a male because, based on my upbringing, I felt like this kind of like, nah, no one's gonna son me, like you say in New York. Like nobody's gonna have that deference over me. But there, I didn't even see other like women. It just wasn't available, right? So what I did was I wrote a lot, and I still have my journals to this day where I would just let it out, man, like completely uncensored, however I was feeling just let it out. I would go pages and pages, F this, F that, and I wish this would happen. And that person that did, they should die and burn in hell, all that kind of stuff. That was my way of coping. Later on, I found somebody that I really related with. I'm in a fraternity. And this person was just a model, exemplary human being, in my view. You get what I'm saying? And watching them and how they responded to things. So in therapy, and I'll say it like this and be quiet. So in therapy, we have something called modeling, right? Where I may not, if you come to see me, I may not give you any interventions like, hey, I want you to do this for homework, and maybe you should target this. But you just seen another black male who you think is successful, who you think responds well to things, like, oh, maybe I could do with Steve. So, oh, I see how he responds. All right. So he was a model for me. So I would see when he was, because he was high in administration, I would see the stuff he would go through with all kinds of people. Like, okay, that gives me another way of responding. I don't have to act that way. So that was my way of kind of coping then. Then when I went on and started getting education, they forced me to be in therapy. They say, if you want to be a good therapist, and I always want to be the best of the best, right? I went into school and said, how do I be the best therapist possible? They said, it's not the textbook, Steve. You got to go to therapy yourself. So the next day, boom, I go find a therapist, talk to a few therapists, and then I started processing that stuff from before. So that's a long answer, but that's how I went about it.
yeah, because we never really hear the backstory of why. I mean,
No,
obviously, the therapist is not there to divulge in their personal business. They're
no,
there to help you, but you want to know your therapist if they've been through problems and how they got through it on the other side. Because it's no worse than sitting in a therapist's office and they're like, huh, yeah, yeah, I hear you, but they're not really. They don't care less. They're just trying to get you out of there.
right,
You know, move on to the next client.
Right.
I think that when there's a therapist that's so in tune to everything you're saying and they can catch you off and they can say, well, that don't add up to what you said earlier.
Right.
They're
Right.
being really they're being really on their job
That's right.
versus a therapist just coming like, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, just keep writing the whole time and like really not engaged, not talking to you, and they're just writing. It's more like coming off judgmental instead of interacting with you.
It's funny you mentioned that because one of the comments I've gotten from people, they said, "Well, Steve, how do you remember what I tell you? I don't see you taking any notes." Because my thing was, I used to work in what's called an outpatient mental health clinic, and they would do something called collaborative note taking, where while you're talking to me, I'm on the computer. I couldn't stand it because after a while, you're like, "Yo, what's he writing in that computer? You're not giving me no eye contact. Come on, what's going on?" So I made it a point when we're talking, just like now, I'm not taking no notes, whatever. I'm truly connecting, and it makes a big, big difference. In the word you used was attunement. I think you used that, and that's the right word. Being attuned to someone, really staying with them, and being there every step of the way.
Yeah, and I think that's really important for somebody that's new
Right.
and they need a lot of guidance. They need someone to really be in tune into what they're saying
Right.
because if you it just come off as disingenuous, like if you're just writing the whole time and you're like and you're not really paying attention to eye contact or anything. So that's why I always tell people to really analyze the therapist, even though they're analyzing you, analyze what they're doing too, because that's just important to build that relationship.
That's right.
Can't tell you how many therapists I had that I didn't like.
Really.
I didn't like the way that they approached certain things or the way they talked to me. But then I found a really good therapist. Her name was Erin, and she was just wonderful.
Yeah.
At first, I was kind of critical of her because I was like, "What does this white woman can't say to this black woman at all?" Like I kid you not. Like I'd be thinking like, we're never gonna mix or
Yeah.
gel. And she was the realest person that I have ever, came in contact with. So I'm mad that I'm not with her after 2 years of being there. And um, she really made me do a lot of self reflection about myself and
Yeah.
things I didn't like about myself.
Mhm.
And I think that that's really important for black men to do some internal work
Yep.
because that's where it starts. That's how you're gonna heal, right? If you're
100.
always thinking about everybody else is the problem except you, everybody can't always be the problem except you, right? Like
That's
it takes two to tango. Like, what are you doing? Like, how are you putting how much effort are you putting into your relationships and your friendships and on your job? Like, if you think everybody is the problem all the time, that tells me that you're really the problem,
that's right.
right?
The common denominator.
And I think that that's really important to get that help. But now I want to switch the conversation over to like just survival mode, integrating it into it. So we always know that black men they might have grown up in the hood, maybe single mother or single parents. They have to fight over everything that they get, and they always think about is either me or you when they're doing a lot of nefarious things in the streets, selling drugs, all of that. But I just never understood about the mentality that I'm gonna have to just kill people just to survive.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you're in I understand the mentality, but I just don't believe in it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Right.
So I never understood why black men just think that they can rob, kill, steal just to survive. Like I would never want to be always looking over my shoulders, thinking I kill someone, somebody's gonna get even with me.
Right.
What do you think? Where do you think that comes from?
Well,
Why?
yeah, that's a man. You ask such great questions. I'm just say that off the record, but I'll say this. So I formed, and this is gonna make sense in a second. I formed a gang-affiliated think tank where people that just care about working with gang-affiliated children, we come together. There's clinicians and lay people, all kinds of people that we just talk about ways to help them, right? So I've had um, intimate experience with things like this. People like I had a client second degree attempted murder and all kinds of stuff like that. What you find is that you may hear, yeah, I just need to survive. But when you look beyond that and you get people talking, most of the time they don't talk. But if you can get through them, there's a variety of reasons as to why people behave the way they do. You get what I'm saying? So me at one point I became very aggressive, and I'll just be honest. And one of the things was I was upset when I saw somebody with two parents in the household. Like, why they get to get the mother and the father? I may say I'm doing this because I want to make some, but no, it's like that kind of hurts me when I see it. And it seems embarrassing to see, but I'll be real. That could be one thing. Some people there's something called negative reinforcement. negative reinforcement is better than no reinforcement at all. So if you get no attention at all, but you could do something that's now going to get people looking at you and you never receive that, could be a reason. So what I would say is that it's interesting and fascinating, but you never really know until you dig deeper with these people. And then you find that there's so many reasons, and everybody's it's unique as a thumbprint. But it just sounds, I guess that's the headline to say, yeah, I need to do it to survive. And so that's why you're hearing it. But when you sit there and you get, and you're good at it, you're good at asking questions. If you sit there, you talk to people, I'm sure you're going to uncover it too.
Yeah, because I always just wondered about, the thought process of the hood mentality. Like, I'm gonna kill, I'm gonna steal, I'm gonna rob to get what I want, and I don't care about how I get it or when I
Yeah.
get it. I just don't believe in that mentality. Like, I mean, I get it. Like, you got to do anything you can, because if you don't get over someone, they're gonna got you, right? They're gonna get you. So you gotta, but it's just that mentality that's creating more mental anguish in your own mind, thinking like, if I sleep in this location and I rob at the location, then it's a potential that someone's going to come and get me. Like, I would always be living my life in fear.
Well,
You know,
what I can gather from you, and I don't know you extremely well, but you seem to have a reasonable level of just self-awareness, or at least the ability or the proclivity to want self.
years of therapy.
It seems like you want to think. There are a lot of people that don't have that at all. So it's like, so what do you do with some people? Is just get them to go through a consequence. Okay, you did this, and then this happened. Do you see this connection? And to us, it seems obvious. So I'm like, oh no, I never really thought about it that way. But you'll find that these people being in survival mode, they're just always on. They're so impulsive. They're not thinking about somebody coming back to get them. And then if you challenge them on it, like, yeah, but they know better, but what do you mean they know better? You know what I'm saying? Anything can happen to anyone. But you'll find that a lot of people, and that's why I'm glad we're having this conversation about self-awareness, about introspection, self-reflection, that's where you can get people to change it. Let me tell you one quick story. I had one person who had been in jail for, it must have been 10 years. And he would replay stories and say, well, to entertain ourselves, we would do this to the inmates, and he was a gang member or whatever. Then one day after many sessions, he said, damn, Steve, I never realized we were just oppressing each other. Like, I'd never really stopped to think about it. Like, we're really just oppressing ourselves. They just never thought of it, because it's just always go, 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 go. So, yeah, it's my 2 cents.
All right. Well, we're getting close to the end here, but I really do thank you for coming on. Being vulnerable and sharing your story. And if you don't mind telling people, like, what states are you operating in as therapy? Because I'm always having them reach out to me and asking me, is there any good therapists?
Yeah.
And you seem like you will be definitely one of them. But is there any particular states that you're?
Yeah, I'm licensed in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, and I'm completely virtual. So as long as you're in those states, I can work with you. Okay. And I'm also taking on someone that's going to work with me, another man of color, in August. So we'll have more capacity there. So I love training people. I love talking about mental health. If people want to just book a consultation just to learn what the process is like, they can. One of the things you'll see if you talk to people who know me, I'm not a salesperson like that. So I don't believe, number one, if you want to come for one session and never come again, you'll never hear the words, well, based on this diagnosis, I think you should. No, go take your vacation for you want to come back, as long as I have the space, we can do it that way too. So they just want to talk. There's no hard selling. I'm not going to force someone to be in therapy at all. And so New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. And I will send you the link when this episode, gets posted. It'll be a while, but if you know any other Black men that willing to come on and be vulnerable, just send them my way as well too. So
I got you.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care, Steve.
Take care.
It's been a blessing.
All right. Same here.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Like pain, now we free from them chains. Heavy hearts, but we moving through the rain. 3 black brothers with the weight on their minds. Till we rise, till we shine, still we